Well, I chose my poems tonight. I wasn't even going to read this, but I decided I'm going to read this since Phil likes the title of my book, Sunbathing on Tyrone Power's Grave. I'll read the title poem. It's the last poem in the book. I am from New York, but I came here to Los Angeles a long time ago. And when you come from a cold city and you move to Los Angeles in January, you just walk around in a bathing suit all the time. Even though it's pretty chilly, it's just not as chilly as it was where you were coming from. So, sunbathing on Tyrone Power's grave. Hollywood forever. Same cemetery as Fay Wray, dangling like a scarf in King Kong's hand. Has-been swans, their screen days behind them, float at the mouth of the grave. Backs of my thighs burn on the stone, skin recoils, sizzles, sinks into Hamlet's words. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. He dropped dead at 44, heart attack, fake sword fighting, making a movie in Spain. Nightmare Alley was our favorite, my dad's and mine. We sat together and watched it on TV. He too had a heart attack at 44. I watched him collapse on the living room floor. Valentine's Day, I was 14, ran down 89th Street yelling for a doctor. I love graveyards. Would walk Mount Auburn Cemetery outside Harvard Square with my old college professor. Big wool coats with pockets. Sometimes we could see the moon in the afternoon, but we never saw the stars. I left the cold winters back east, moved to LA, wore a two-piece under my clothes every day. You never knew who might have a pool. A rotting corpse is teeming with life. Maybe Tyrone's bones are still breathing today. Maybe after my father's third, final heart attack, there was a moment he remembered only the good things, whether or not they ever happened. I used to sunbathe on Tyrone Power's grave when sunbathing was something we still did. Flowers around me, angels in bikinis, smoking cool lights. So that's the story of that. So I saw, Phil, you had this poem in your little preview. So I'm going to read it. It's called Alternative Facts. So I never really wrote what you'd call political poems, but in the last 3 years or so, really, have we had any choice? As poets, we have to tell what we see, and I wrote this poem called Alternative Facts. The sky is blue because that's the color my child likes to draw it. 2 + 2, if one of the twos is pregnant, equals 5. The earth is flat. Columbus, a fabulous guy, fell off the side. He was also a loser who didn't build a wall to protect himself. The sales lady with a pencil stuck in her bun caught me borrowing bell-bottom jeans at Morris Brothers when I was 13. We do not all bleed. In fact, blood is not always blood red. Blood is a different color in different colored bodies. I'm telling you this, and so it's true. Facts only work when we need them to. Take this knife and jab it into my guts. Columbus is still inside me, discovering America. She's never trusted happiness. Maybe it was something her mother said one morning as the young girl dipped her donut into a glass of whole milk, powdered sugar still on her lips. Her mother tells her, "Don't get used to this." So everyone thinks that poems are autobiographical. Do you all think that? They're not. They're not. We make this stuff up, you see, just like other writers. You know, if you're a thriller writer and you write about someone murdering people, and you know, does anyone think that they really murdered people? No. So we make this stuff up, you know, even though that was a true story, basically. But so I had a great teacher named Thomas Lux, who was my very first teacher at Emerson College when I was 17. I've known him all these years, and he passed away a couple of years ago. It was very sad, tragic, and I used to send him my poems over the years. I used to email him, and he would email me back. And with this manuscript, he said, "Kimmy," he said, "you're writing a lot about death." And I didn't really see it in this manuscript, and it made me unhappy that he thought I wrote about death. And that night, I went to sleep, and I had a dream about a bird, and I wrote this poem. And it's called "He Said I Wrote About Death." And this book is dedicated to Thomas Lux. He said I wrote about death, and I didn't mean to. That was not my intent. I meant to say how I loved the birds, how watching them lift off the branches, hearing their song, helps me get through the gray morning. When I wrote about how they crash into the small, dark places that only birds can fit through, layers of night sky, pipes through drains, how I've seen them splayed across gutters, piles of feathers stuck together by dried blood, how once my car ran over a sparrow, though I swerved, the road was narrow. The bird not quick enough, dragged it under my tire as I drove to forget, bird disappearing part by part, beak, slender feet, fretful, hot. I did not mean to write about death, but rather how when something dies, we remember who we love, and we die a little too, we who are still breathing, we who still have the energy to survive. So last night, thank you. Last night I did a reading at Skylight Books, which is a wonderful bookstore in LA, with Eloise Klein-Healy, Francesca Bell, and Ron Kirchie. And before I got up, Ron said to me, "Don't read about anything sad. People just really want to hear funny poems. They don't want to hear about anything sad." But this book has a lot of really sad poems in it. And I said, "Okay, Ron, I won't." And then I read that poem. So, what are you going to do?
More dead bird poems.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have about 3 in this book.
All right.
I have a lot of dead bee poems.
Okay, go for that. Too small. Too small.
There, we have the right spirit here. All right. Well, here's a little. I like to read this poem in California because people on the East Coast, they still don't really get this poem because we have more health food stores than anybody. Yay, health food stores. I don't know if you guys have Erewhon in Ventura, but I'm sure you have Whole Foods, right? Or something like, you know, We Love Healthy Foods, Inc., or something like that. Well, I shop at this Erewhon a lot. I go there for lunch. And I have a poem in another book I wrote called "The People in the Health Food Store Don't Look Healthy." And it's before Erewhon was redone, and it looked really bad in there, and you'd go and you'd think, I'm going to get sick just being here. But now they redid it, and it's about 5 times as expensive, and people really do look healthy in there. So this is an experience. I write a lot of poems in parking lots after I shop. So I have a poem for Bloomingdale's and for Target and for Loehmann's, and this one is basically for Erewhon. It's called Unruly Aura. The cashier at the health food store tells me I have a beautiful aura. Wait, I tell her, if you want to see a really beautiful aura, wait until I've taken my Renew Life Ultimate Flora Probiotic. After that, my aura will knock your socks off. She smiles at me and rings me up. My money has a beautiful aura too. My dollar bills float out of my pink wallet. The man behind me swells from the heat I generate. Each step I take brings me closer to God, the final, fabulous aura. Take my hand, I tell her, squeeze my aura. It's hungry and looking for someone to devour. All right, well, I'm going to tell you this poem. This is for you. Yeah. So it's another political poem, but so back in 2017, I don't know who knows this, but the administration, I can't say his name, so the administration banned the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, from using 7 words in their reports. Are you aware of this? Of course you are. You live in Ventura, and you're here for poetry night. But I'll review the 7 words. So, fetus, transgender, science-based, evidence-based, diversity, vulnerable, entitlement. Those words are banned from being used by the CDC. So there was a website that went up that asked for poets to respond to writing poems using those 7 banned words. And I just loved that so much. So here's my poem. I am my own transgender fetus. My mother thought I was a lesbian when I came home from school wearing a flannel shirt, fresh from a march across the Boston Common, the 70s. No entitlement back then, no transgender friend. We all hid inside our sleepless nights, smoking fat joints of science-based conclusions. Rolling out our private stomach aches, watching evidence stack up higher than we could see. I feel so vulnerable tonight, hungry for diversity. Where is my entitlement? I am my own transgender fetus, floating in a tank with no borders, banging my soft, unformed skull into the glass ceiling, seeking any spray of light. As our world rolls backward over a grassless hill of mutant crickets, button up your collar until your mouth is invisible. All evidence-based, science-based, beautiful womb face lips erased. Who doesn't crave a chance to say banned words, hear their echo like vapor stain the wall of our lives, our slurred speech aching for clarity? Well, so many poets here, so you know how some poems you struggle over them and put them away for a few months, take them out, it's still not right, go on. And then some, it's rare, but they come through you. You feel them come through you, they hit you, and like Anne Sexton said, they come from God through you. Whether or not you believe in God, I know what she's talking about. And this was like that for me, and it's called Thirst. It's from my father. My father never saw my house, though without his modest savings, we never could have bought it. My father didn't know his grandson past the age of 10, but today at 28, my boy has his eyes and many of his talents. My father died thirsty. We couldn't fill his needs. No one could. He had a big personality, my mother would say, sucked the air out of a room, needed you to pay attention to his every word. A wall of talk we wanted to jump over. My father could tell a good joke, do the accents, had the timing. Why wasn't that appreciated? He could sell anything, untangle a knot out of the most delicate chain. His stuff looked nice, his paintings framed. He'd serve pats of butter on a dish, restaurant style. Our people leave us, and we let them go. They fade into the tapestry of the dead, an occasional memory slapping us in the face, tapping us on the shoulder, kissing the breeze by our cheek. We wait for the wind to blow these reminders like it did for me today, just now in my garden, that he never saw but would have loved, even though my roses are struggling, their white petals dropping. So thirsty they are, so ready for a drink. All right, let's see, a couple more. So, as you know now, I grew up in New York City, and when you live in New York City, you don't learn how to drive because you don't need to. And so I was going to move to LA, and I had to take driving lessons, and I was in Boston, and I failed the test about 3 times, and that was that. And I moved to LA, and people tried to help me desperately, and I eventually got a license, so I can drive. I wouldn't drive too close to me if you see me on the road. But one thing that still eluded me is parking. Horrible. I need a Xanax, basically, to park my car. And then this happened, and I wrote the poem, and it's called In the Moment. I just parallel parked exactly right for the first time ever. Maybe because I wasn't imagining a tsunami killing me on Sunday in Laguna, or thinking about my mother alone at home, or when I dropped the puppy off the patio. She was fine. I never recovered. But today, windows down, no radio, just sky, steering wheel, and my hands were one. And backing into the space, feeling my tires hug the curb, was a clean slide into home. That rare fit of perfection was upon me. And let me say right now, I didn't waste it. Well, it's that time in our lives where we go for a lot of tests at the doctor. I'm sure Howard's had a lot of tests at the doctor. And I recently had to have what's called an echocardiogram. Doesn't hurt. So I wrote this poem called The Echo of Love. They send me to the hospital for an echocardiogram so they can see inside my heart. Lou, the technician, tells me my heart is like a house with many rooms, and this will show them the size of the rooms, if they have cracks in the ceiling, leaks in the pipes, a damaged sun porch. I can hear whooshing, see my blood flow, see it drop, the colors on the screen, red, blue, green, like a geyser exploding, like the colors of falling in love. Blasting through my body, fluttering through the day, the same pounding, racing away, my heart screaming, let me out of here. I say, Lou, How are things looking? Pretty good, huh? Big flow, all those colors. And he says we need to take a deeper look before we know if there's a problem. I understand. Take a deep look, as deep as you need, Lou. You will be the only one who will ever know what goes on inside those chambers. Thank you.